Welcome into the PFF NFL Daily. Today discussing, starting with this Monday Night Football madness, an incredible game. But Derrick Henry specifically, Sam, does he matter? Is he the exception? We've called him the exception here. We've both come around to maybe Derrick Henry matters more than other running backs. We saw that a little bit again on Monday Night Football. So our Derrick Henry thoughts. Is he in the MVP conversation too? Like, a lot of questions to ask here.
There we go. Does Derrick Henry matter? Been there, done that. If you go back to all the way to episode number 5 of the PFF NFL Daily, running backs don't matter, but does Derrick Henry? And honestly, the analysis hasn't really changed. Yes, Derrick Henry, it turns out, matters. Like, he is a unicorn. He's different. He breaks everything we know about running backs and how much they are a product of the environment around them. So now it's time to start asking, in the season of 2021, 6 weeks into it, is Derrick Henry actually in the MVP conversation? Like, this award that has become just a quarterback award, no other position can possibly match quarterbacks because of how important they are to every team's offense and how they drive success. But does Derrick Henry actually belong in that conversation? And when you watch the Titans play, it's kind of hard to argue that he doesn't at this point. Like, he is the thing that just drives that offense forward. And like that puts him there, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there are a handful of games a year where Derrick Henry kind of takes over. And the fun part about this season is he's usually a slow starter. You know, sometimes you're into week 3 or 4 and you don't even get, you have a bunch of games where it's like, hey, 18 carries for 50 yards. He has been absolutely on fire. And you do see there are games during the season last year in overtime where he just takes over and creates these big runs. In this Buffalo game, you have the 76-yarder. So when you're creating a 76-yard touchdown, I mean, that's completely, forget flipping the field. That is putting points on the board in a situation where you shouldn't be. So that is what Derrick Henry brings. Big playability, but also you get him in the red zone, tough to tackle, had the 3 touchdowns. The pace is ridiculous. I know the 17-game schedule makes everything skewed, but he's on pace for like 2,400 yards, right? The 28 touchdowns, the whole thing. I mean, if he puts up numbers like that, even with the ridiculous QB numbers, whatever Brady ends up with, whatever Dak and Kyler and Lamar, whatever they end up with, if Derrick Henry keeps this pace, yeah, he'll be right in that conversation. But let me just throw one more thing in there. Julio Jones has been pretty much a non-factor this year. A.J. Brown's been very much a non-factor. Ryan Tannehill has played all right, but it's this depleted Tennessee Titans team, and Derrick Henry is carrying them to a 4-2 record right now.
Yeah, and Derrick Henry is such an absolute freak in terms of rushing statistics that he always has one of my favorite stats ever. And it's over pretty much any time period, but it's happening this season again. Derrick Henry has almost 600 yards after contact this season. That, of course, is more yards than anybody else has, just total rushing yards. Like, Derrick Henry generates more yards after contact than any running back in the NFL generates total. He's that much of an absolute freak. And that's true this year. It's true if you go back since the start of 2019. In fact, the distance gets even bigger. Like, he is gapping the field by 300 yards since the start of 2019 in terms of yards after contact. Like, he's generating more rushing yards after somebody gets a shot on him than any other running back is in the league total. And the freakish thing is his workload is insane. Like, he is long past the point where you look at a running back's workload and say, ooh, this is a little bit concerning. We got to start expecting Derrick Henry's play to fall off a cliff now. Like, he's reached that point. He's done the Larry Johnson number, all these running backs that have had this insane workload and then just disappeared. Derrick Henry, at least at every level of his football career, high school, college, now the NFL, has had at least one season where they have just loaded him up and he has been the offense. Like, they have trucked this entire thing onto his shoulders and said, on you go. And he's done it every single time, doesn't break down, just keeps on trucking, gets stronger as the game goes on, legitimately becomes a difference maker in the fourth quarter when you need him the most. And it's hard to argue with that at this point.
Derrick Henry has, there are 4 running backs that have at least 100 carries in the NFL. Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, and Zeke Elliott. Derrick Henry has 46 more carries than Joe Mixon, including negated plays, just to get, all of those carries out there. 46 more carries through 6 weeks. 46 more carries than Joe Mixon. So it just shows what he's bringing from a workload standpoint. Now, because defenses put so much attention on Derrick Henry, the efficiency stats at that level of volume aren't going to be as good as other running backs. He doesn't have the highest first down percentage or whatever it might be. Even from a grading standpoint, there's going to be so many plays where he just can't do anything, right? But he always exceeds expectations, and that's been a big thing in the analytics community. Rushing yards over expectations. We have our own model here at PFF, and Derrick Henry is consistently the guy that is exceeding expectations, because expectations against 8-man boxes, which he faces more than anyone else, are low, and he continues to exceed them. I'll give you one other number right after the break, though, because NFL fans, you hungry for a big win this week? DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, they got you covered. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game, and if they do, you win $200 in free bets. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. It's all that simple. If Sportsbook isn't available yet in your state, DraftKings won't leave you empty-handed. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes all season long with DraftKings daily fantasy sports contests. You can use Derrick Henry, but I'm sure he's, a high price in these daily fantasy contests. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF. Bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game and win $200 in free bets. And if they win, you win with promo code PFF this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. The one stat is he's the most valuable running back in the league this year using PFF WAR. He was actually coming into the week. He will be coming out of the week. And that's where that volume gets taken into account, what he brings from a workload standpoint.
Yeah, and look, I'll give you one kind of clincher in the whole thing, that when we were doing our PFF live show on Sunday previewing this week's games, and we were talking about this Monday Night Football game, the Bills and the Titans, Dr. Eric Eager, conductor of the Running Backs Don't Matter freight train, along with the rest of the analytics guys and all the work they've done on running backs, not just conceded, but volunteered the point that Derrick Henry matters. Like, all the work that those guys have done, pushing people away from the idea that running backs materially make a difference to things at the NFL level. Even Eric is just pointing out the obvious, that Derrick Henry's different. He is the exception. He is the thing that breaks all the rules that the one thing you shouldn't be doing is, trying to chase and assuming you found the unicorn and the exception to the rule. But that doesn't mean there won't be one. And it does appear that the Titans have found one in Derrick Henry and, stumbled into them because they drafted him in the second round. Like, this was not one of the guys you took in the top 5 of the draft that you were 100% certain was going to break all the rules. This was somebody you found and, early in his career didn't necessarily look like it was going to go this way. And then when you made the switch at quarterback and Tannehill came in for Marcus Mariota, something clicked and this connection was forged, and so suddenly Derrick Henry became this unstoppable force.
I think that's the really good point, again, because we love team building season. We love to discuss all of those things. The point being, if you went and said, you know what, we're just going to replicate the Titans' success. We're just going to find a dude who's 250 pounds, who was so athletic and so big as a recruit, they wanted him to play linebacker. They're like, no, you can't play running back. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm faster than everybody else on the field and bigger. Let me play running back. Finding the unicorn is the challenge, right? And, again, Nick Chubb, when he's healthy, I think is probably up in that echelon. And, there's a couple other guys, Alvin Kamara, which we see him taper off a little bit this year when he doesn't have Drew Brees and doesn't get featured. But Derrick Henry continues to pass these tests. And again, I think the most impressive thing is his durability. The other part this year, they're using him in the pass game a lot more, even split out as a receiver. And he's been efficient in that area as well. So the workload, if anything, is just going up, up, and up at a time, as you mentioned earlier, that it just shouldn't. So don't chase the Derrick Henry, but when you have him, we can acknowledge, hey, he's pretty special.
Right. And none of this means that it's all Derrick Henry. Just because Derrick Henry, I think, is different and does break rules does not mean that he's impervious to a bad situation. Like, if you took Derrick Henry off the Titans roster right now, threw him on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster, I don't know that he would do that much better than Najee Harris is doing right now. Like, Najee Harris does not have any kind of platform to work from, whereas Derrick Henry does with the Tennessee Titans. Now, when you give him that platform, he becomes this special unicorn that is destroying everything we know about running backs. But that doesn't mean if you lost 5 offensive linemen and Ryan Tannehill goes down and the backup quarterback situation is awful, suddenly you might see even Derrick Henry run into a brick wall that he can't overcome in terms of environmental factors.
Second straight year, the Titans have a top 5, top 6 run blocking unit, offensive line plus backs and tight ends. They're bottom 7 in pass blocking, but that offensive line and friends have done a great job run blocking. But Derrick Henry, fair enough to call him the exception. Another exceptional night for King Henry on Monday Night Football.